I'm in the studio today with Democratic candidate for the Senate 10 race, Ghazala Hashmi. Ghazala, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Evan. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Now, I know that you're a big advocate for diversity, especially since you come from a diverse background yourself. And as I'm sure you know, if elected, you'd be the first Muslim American woman to run for Virginia State Senate. Tell me what that means to you.
Well, it is an opportunity to make history in an important way, but I don't ever think of it in a personal context. And what I really see as being significant about the fact that I'm the first Muslim to be running for the state Senate, as well as the opportunity to be the first Muslim woman in the General Assembly, is that it says so much about our community. Our community is ready to embrace diverse voices and perspectives, and the fact that I've been able to succeed as I have been in not just the primary, but now moving forward to the general election, it indicates that Virginia is a state that is open to different voices, and we have a significant opportunity to make sure that so many of our different communities have expression and representation.
And that's definitely something to be proud of, and it's important in Virginia. Now, as I understand, you have 2 daughters, correct?
That's right.
And what does this mean to them? Do they look up to you? Are they proud of you?
They are so proud and so excited. My oldest is now 26 and she lives and works in DC, and our youngest daughter is a second year at University of Virginia. But they have just been excited by the momentum of the campaign and the fact that that they see a woman, their mom, running for office. But the opportunity to elect more women is keenly important to both of them, and they know that I have the issues of their generation firmly in mind, and so they're very, very excited by this.
And that's a perfect segue into the next question, because it pertains to both your daughters and all young voters in Virginia, and that is, what would you say are the most important issues facing young voters in Virginia?
What I see as most critical for young voters in Virginia is really critical for all young people, not just in this country, but throughout the world. And there's a really important commonality among the young generation that I find fascinating and remarkable, and as the real chance for change on a global level. Young people today are so invested in what's happening in the world around them, because this really is their world. And the critical issues that I hear repeatedly from young folks are, what is my future going to be like? And the climate crisis is at the top of their list. They understand that we have to make some changes immediately in order to address this issue, because this is the world that they are inheriting. They're also very concerned about gun safety issues, because, as you know, your generation has lived through terrible tragedies inside of schools and inside of colleges, and this is a reality that you've grown up with. And so I know my daughters and their friends are very, very concerned about issues of gun safety. And then lastly, young folks are really concerned about the economy. What kind of new jobs, new opportunities are going to be open to them? And do they have the right skills, the right training to take on those new jobs? So those are really important issues for so many young folks.
Now, you mentioned climate change or gun control. What do you think could be done on that front at the state level?
There's a lot of things that we can do immediately at the state level. As you know, in July, the Governor Northam called for a special session to address gun safety issues in Virginia. And we had an opportunity to take up some really common sense gun legislation, such as universal background checks, the implementation of red flag laws, making sure that we track and monitor the sales of weapons so that they are not indiscriminately available to anybody who wants to purchase these weapons. And we had that opportunity to have the discussion. Our GOP lawmakers refused to engage in any kind of meaningful discussion, and in fact, they only voted to adjourn. And so one of the items that we want to make sure in our next General Assembly is that we address that legislative action immediately and that we implement common sense gun safety measures in Virginia to protect our families, to protect our children. And as far as climate change and the climate crisis, we can move quickly in Virginia to embrace the new technologies and efficient energy sources such as wind and solar, develop those areas so that we reduce our dependency on fossil fuels and reduce our carbon emissions. And we can do that in Virginia, we can do that regionally, and hopefully as a country we move forward in that direction as well.
That's good. And now I saw on your campaign website that you feel that, and I quote, providing quality public education for all Virginia families is our shared social responsibility. And your website went on to say that regardless of socioeconomic status, children have a right to public educational institutions that are supportive and that nurture intellectual curiosity and creativity. Now, if elected, what type of legislation would you like to see addressing that issue?
That's a great question. We are in a position now in Virginia where I'm so pleased that our governor, as well as our Secretary of Education and so many of our lawmakers, are ready, first of all, to move forward on universal pre-K. Having a quality pre-K program that's available to all of our young students is very essential because research has shown that when students receive, or children receive, the opportunity to have a structured, nurturing environment to develop their learning skills at a very young age, they're ready to enter into a quality educational program and they're ready to learn. We've got great disparity, though, in our communities. Some of our children are getting excellent pre-K programs and other students aren't, and that's based on economic availability from their parents. So if we support having universal pre-K, that sets the start for all of our children to really move effectively into education. Making sure that we have quality K-12 educational opportunities regardless of zip code is also the next step for everybody in Virginia. And then also making sure that higher education, whether it's community colleges and moving in career and technical training programs or moving into four-year colleges, higher learning, all of those are areas that we can certainly make strong changes to. It depends on our priorities. And if we make education a priority in Virginia, then we will see wonderful results.
Now, as I'm sure you know, young voters rarely show up to the polls, not just for primary elections, but especially for off-year elections. Do you think this is because we have a lot of young voters who are uneducated and don't know who to vote for, or they feel their vote doesn't matter? Tell me your thoughts on this.
I'm actually seeing the opposite this time around. There is so much energy and so much momentum among our young citizens, and I think that's because they know what's at stake. Their future's at stake. And the next 10 years really are at stake for us in Virginia because we will be deciding our district lines after this election, and we want to make sure that our districts are drawn in a nonpartisan and equitable manner. So young folks that I'm encountering know what's at stake, they know how important this election is, and we have a tremendous number of young folks out canvassing, volunteering for us. They're so smart. They know the issues. They can talk about the issues better than a lot of the adults that I encounter, and it's just wonderful working with the young folks in the community.
And now, on that note, what are you doing to reach out to voters to encourage them to get to the polls?
Personally, I'm out canvassing every day, knocking on doors, and I am also working with many different groups to meet with folks in the community and spread that word. We have a wonderful field operation in my campaign, and we've got many volunteers that are going out on a daily basis and also calling the voters in our district, reminding them that not only is that this is an election year, as it always is in Virginia, but that this is probably the most critical election year, and that this Senate race in particular is the top targeted race because it will determine who has the majority in the Virginia State Senate.
Now, if you do get those voters to come out on Election Day, what is one thing you want them to remember about you?
I want them to remember that my focus is always about the community. I've lived in this community, in this particular district, for close to 30 years. I've raised my family here, and my daughters and my husband and I have a deep love for the community, for the families and the people that we've been working with. And my goal is always to serve this particular community so that we see opportunities for all of our families.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've been speaking with the Democratic candidate for the Senate 10 race, Ghazala Hashmi. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Evan.